Everybody wants to look ahead to 2026, make predictions, prognostications, but wouldn't the prudent thing be to first look back at the year that was in 2025? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Last Honest Realtor podcast. I'm your host, David Fleming. Thank you for joining me here today in what will be the last podcast of the year, sadly, but maybe not so much because, it has been a grind. And I never thought I'd say this, but I'm actually looking forward to a couple weeks off at the end of the year. So today I want to talk about 2025, notably what happened and why, what we can glean from these stories. And I will be telling a lot of stories because I've always felt that, we do look at trends and market movements and statistics. I think that the stories from within the market to me are the best explainer of what's actually happening. And there's a lot of podcasts, there's a lot of articles, there's a lot of experts, there's a lot of newspaper stories, but who is telling you what's happening? How much experience do they have? Are they in the market? And far be it for me to say, I think that by telling stories today about actual listings that I've had, buyers that have bought, sellers that have sold, experiences that we've had collectively, that's the best way to really review the year that was. So let's start month by month. We'll start in January of 2025. Can you even remember that far back? My goodness, it was a different time. Now, we started the year with optimism. Now, who was optimistic? I was optimistic. I'll be honest, I really, truly was. We hit the peak of the real estate market in Toronto in February of 2022. I was a little optimistic in mid-2024 when the Bank of Canada started cutting interest rates. So suffice it to say, we started in January, and I was definitely optimistic. Now, the Bank of Canada rate was down to 3.25%. That's from a high of 5%. But then something happened in January. Something that would change, not to be too dramatic, but all of our lives forever. Donald Trump. It just started. It started, and he hadn't taken office yet, but everyone was talking about what would happen when he did. Now, first story. January 21st, within hours of being on the market, I sold a house on a beautiful street in North Leaside. Why is this story important? Well, because standing in the freezing cold, it was negative 14. We thought about how many people are not looking at this property today because it's cold, because it's dreary, because it's miserable. I was there with my clients at 5:30 p.m. We had an offer in by 8:30. Don't get me wrong, we paid full list for the house. But this house was undervalued. This house shoulda, woulda, coulda sold for more. And the takeaway from this is that these folks spent to their absolute max on this house. And my client said to me, quote, I can't even afford to paint it. Now, why did they do that? Because they got the neighborhood, the school district, the street. It's Reichert. It's a beautiful street in North Leaside. And they got everything. Yeah, but the house needed some work. So you think about, for the longest time, people wanted move-in ready. They wanted renovated. They wanted perfection. They don't want to do a single thing to it. And to be honest, some of the buyer pool is still like that. But here's a story where these folks who were living on the east side in a semi, they said, we will sacrifice our own utility, our own happiness, if you will, to get the right future. Location, location, location. Now, I loved that move. Now, one of our first listings was an interesting one, good litmus test. Let's say that this was on Heward. It wasn't, but it was on a neighboring street in Leslieville. We listed this property that they had purchased a couple years earlier through a different agent, bought at the peak of the market. We knew that they weren't going to be able to recapture what they had, but we listed this property for sale, and the open house was absolute madness. I've told this story before on Last Honest Realtor and on my blog. I remember Tara from my team did the open house. She sent me a photo of 22 pairs of Bluntstones. Why is that important? Because every single buyer that came through was young and had the same shoes, but they all talked about how they were so unique and different. This was a sign of things to come in the market. Every single person that came through this house, they owned a condo, and they all said their condo's unique, their condo's different. Even though we're in a bad condo market, there was a lot of yeah buts. Yeah, but you should see my view. Yeah, but I've got this great kitchen. Yeah, but. And this was the beginning of the year. So the condo market had been declining through 2023 and 2024 as the whole market had. But every single young buyer that came through here holding their organic coffee, they all looked at this house and were like, yeah, we're going to buy this. We just need to sell our condo. And that was a sign of things to come. So interestingly enough, we had 4 offers in this house on offer night. We didn't take any of them. We did sell it a week later. Now that's a sign of things to come too, because once upon a time, a house in Leslieville underlisted with an offer date, it wasn't a matter of if you're going to sell, but for how much. Now a week later, I had another listing, similar price point, similar location just off Danforth, same thing. We had 4 offers on the offer night. And I told my clients, hey, listen, I just had this happen with a similar property down in Leslieville. We don't have to take one of these offers tonight. We can relist it at a higher price. We can wait and see what happens. And they weighed the pros and cons, and they said, we'll take the highest offer. So it goes to show you, in January, with those two stories there, one of them we get 4 offers and they decide, let's hold out, let's roll the dice. The other one they get 4 offers and they say, let's just take the highest one. In January, we were starting to see these properties, which were absolute gold in the previous 3 years, they're going to be a little bit trickier to move. Now, why this is important is because myself and a lot of agents like me, we adapted and we rolled with the punches, but a lot of folks, both sellers and agents, they didn't. They held on, they acted like it was 2022, and boy, was it a tough year for them. So end of the month, January 30th, the Bank of Canada cuts the interest rate from 3.25 down to 3. We started to think, maybe, just maybe, this will light a fire under the market. Now, in February, we got our first look at the stats. The January stats, Treb average home price was $1,040,994, up 1.4% year over year. So what I mean is January 2025 home price was higher than January of 2024. Pay attention to that stat, because I'm literally going to come back to this at every single juncture for the rest of this podcast. So why that was important to me was that the trough of the market, and you remember February of 2022, the average home price in the GTA was $1,334,324. I can't remember the last 3 digits, but $1,334,000. From there, it went down. The trough, the lowest point, was $1,026,703 from Jan of 2024. So this is important for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's up year over year. And number 2, we're above that trough. So January sales, 3,847, the 3rd lowest of all time and down from 2024. So prices up, but sales are down. Now, a couple more stories. I sold a $6 million house in a luxury area, which is not the story. The story is to who and why. It was somebody from the United States. Now you might say, hang on a second. Americans can't buy property here. Foreign buyer tax. No, this is a Canadian living and working in the United States who's looking to retire in 2 or 3 years and come back. Why that's important is because everyone's negative about the market. The media, the buyer pool. We've talked on this podcast before about a website that cheers people losing money in real estate. Hey, look, these guys just sold for 1.2. They bought for 1.6 at the peak. Ha ha. Right? The Schadenfreude. Did I pronounce that correctly? So I've always felt that misery loves company, and this might be an unpopular opinion, but if somebody of that level of success and net worth decides now being February of 2025, is the time to jump in and buy that house, maybe they know something that the masses don't. Now, I found that one interesting. Another interesting one is I had a condo at 1 Scott Street that sold in 9 days. Why is that significant? Because it was all downhill from there. Or uphill, if you will. We listed for $719 and we sold for $710 after 9 days on the market. I cannot tell you how much more difficult it got after that. Now, Trump and tariffs. This is what happened in February. We started to see this. Everybody was scared stiff. The market basically went on pause. And then, it was a question of how this would affect the numbers moving forward. So another interesting story. I sold a home to, and this one really, really bothers me. I sold a home to 2 individuals, and I'm going to try to preserve anonymity here, who are exceptionally sought after individuals as far as the country goes. Can I be more vague? Let's say that we have issues with attracting talent, whether they're doctors or whether they're engineers or whether they're nuclear physicists, whatever they are. They couldn't buy a home because of the speculation tax. So let's say they want to buy for $4 million. And right off the bat, I'm going to lose sympathy there. Oh, well, they have $4 million. They can afford the tax. Sorry, I'm not a communist. I don't subscribe to that. But the tax is 25% for the municipal and another 10% for the provincial. I might have had that backwards. 35%. Now, what happens is once you become a permanent resident, you get your PR card, the government gives you that back. But let me put my tinfoil hat on for a moment and say, I don't trust the government to give you the money back that's yours. So what ended up happening here was that they moved here. It was a long courtship, a long recruiting period from the hospital or the government, wherever it is. As I said, I'm trying to preserve their anonymity. Exceptionally sought after for years, trying to bring these people to the country. They moved here with their families and they can't buy a house because the government labels them speculators. And I remember one of them said to me, I've moved my family here from the United States. We live here. Our children are enrolled in schools. Why does the government label us as speculators? Because they do. So what ended up happening there was their employer paid the tax for them. Almost $1.5 million, which of course the employer will get back, in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months once they become PRs. But the lesson here, and I wrote about this on my blog, a blog called Do Speculation Taxes Actually Target Speculators? Please read it if you have time. The lesson here is that our government is so useless and it's so screwed up. Do you have any idea how many people we are pushing away? I'll tell you that employer who I work with, I took another couple on a tour in March, and once they found out about the speculation tax, they took a job in LA. Couldn't come to Toronto because they can't buy a home without paying 35% in tax. So apologies if I have belabored that one. One more blog I wanted to mention. I wrote a blog called Top 10 People You Shouldn't Take Real Estate Advice From. It was very tongue-in-cheek. It was supposed to be funny. Number one on the list was some guy doing a podcast. I talked about any agent doing anything on TikTok because I want to channel my inner old man. I talked about BlogTO. Every single article is like, nobody buying real estate anymore. Sales at -1. When you hire food critics and travel bloggers to write about real estate, you're not really getting like cutting edge economic insight. And I think the number one was your parents. Yeah. Number two was financial planners, and people are going to hate that. I've just seen a lot of financial planners that are like, no, you can't take this money out of your account and go buy real estate with it because, I'm supposed to be managing your money. So anyways, that was a fun blog. Let's go to March. In March, we had, of course, the February stats. Now, here's where things changed. I mentioned in January, we were up year over year. In February, the average home price was $1,084,000, 2.2% less than 2024. Sales were 4,037, the lowest in any month of February ever. This is where we start to see the Trump effect. The market was completely frozen. So, spoiler alert. The reason I said in January, remember that it was up year over year, is because it's the only month in 2025 where we're up year over year. Spoiler alert, but I wanted to get out ahead of that. Now, the Bank of Canada cuts rates again from 3% to 2.75 on March 13th. Blanket appraisals was on my radar. I wrote a blog about this. And essentially, folks, when a builder decides to sell pre-construction units, they'll usually partner with a bank to say, yeah, we can get you financing. But how can you get someone financing 5 years away? That doesn't make sense. Lenders right now are literally pulling commitments, not to scare you, but they're pulling commitments from people days before closing. And meanwhile, you're going to tell me that you can approve Billy for his purchase when it closes 5 years from now? Who knows what Billy's going to be doing? Is Billy going to be gainfully employed? Or did he take a job as an influencer, Bitcoin investor, and, addicted gambler? Welcome to 2025 in Canada. So I thought that was ridiculous. A lot of economists thought it was ridiculous. I spoke to Ben Rabideau, a friend of mine, an economist, North Cove Advisors, and we talked about this. And ultimately what we found was that it's potentially undermining the Bank Act to go ahead and appraise something at 2025 at the same value you used for appraisal in 2020 when the market has declined by 30%. And by 30%, I mean taking into consideration how overvalued pre-construction condos were to begin with. So some numbers. Let's say that you bought a pre-con for $700,000 in 2020 and you get an appraisal, $700,000. 2025, you go to take possession, it's literally worth $500. Oh, RBC says, oh yeah, $700,000. It's called a blanket appraisal. And like Ben and I said, it's basically circumventing the Bank Act. So that was on my radar. That will continue to be on my radar. And then a friend of mine from another brokerage, not really a friend, she sent me, that was so rude, a friend of a friend, she sent me an email and said, hey, I know you've got a lot of buyers. We've got this really great condo coming out and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, there's 1 million condos coming out. And then I looked and she had an offer date. I said, you have an offer date on a condo? That's not going to work. So I wrote a blog post called 2025's Best Oxymoron, Condo Offer Dates. Now, I was in Florida on vacation with my family. I'll never forget this because they were like, Daddy, come play, come swim in the pool. And I was like, must crunch data. I downloaded every single condo sale from 2022 through 2025 in the dates January 1st to March 16th to contrast and compare because I'm a nerd. I don't know if that's not painfully obvious. I have the G.I. Joe bridge layer over my shoulder. Okay, 80s kids, remember how hard that was to find? Okay, you all had that one friend that had it. Well, I want to know that, kid. So yes, I'm a nerd. And here's what I found. In 2025, for condo sales, Jan 1 to March 16th, because I was clearly in Florida March 17, 84% selling under list. 11.6% selling over list. I don't know who's selling for over list in 2025, but good for you. 2024, 74.5% under list. 2023, 70.5% under list. And 2022, 24.8%. Only a quarter of all listings sold for under list. So let's work backwards here. What percentage of properties, condominiums, are selling over the list price in what is essentially Q1? 2025, 11.6%. Meep. 2024, 19.8%. 2023, 22.2%. 2022, 67.8% selling over list. So I wrote that blog. I love the data. My kids clearly didn't get to interact with me that afternoon or any other afternoon. And then that property that girl listed didn't sell. And she said she'd owe me lunch. I think I said you owe me lunch. And then, I don't know, never had lunch. What does Michael Douglas say in Wall Street? Lunch? You gotta be kidding me. Lunch is for wimps. So that was a fun blog post. That takes us to April. In April, we looked again back to the March Treb stats. Down 2.5% year over year. So as I said, we were up in Jan and no other month of the year is down. But keep in mind, 2.5, rounding error, just wait and see what happens. Now, March sales, 5,011. That's the lowest of all time for March. And we're down from 2024, which is the second lowest ever, 23.6%. This is the Trump effect. Sales are the lowest of all time in Feb, the lowest of all time in March, and now we're down year over year in March by 23.6%. Now I had a condo listing. It was down at Lakeshore and Cooper. We listed it for $629.9. 22 days in the market. $599.9. 16 days in the market. $574.9. 27 days in the market. We sold for $550. 65 days in the market. Remember I told you in the month of January I had that sale, 9 days in the market? And I said it's all downhill from here. This one was only 65 days, guys. Only 65 days, only 2 price reductions. This was the market for condos in 2025. Now, I had another listing, which we'll say was on the east side. This is a good one. And I'm a visual thinker, so I remember I was outside raking my front lawn and I was on the phone with this guy. I got a bully offer on this listing. And the bully was for $1,250,000. So I got a guy calls me and he's like pretty chill. He's like, hey, David, I saw you got a bully offer. My client's kind of interested. You know, I know you can't really tell me where you're at, but like, I'll tell you, you know, like, you know, if you got over, 115, and I was like, 115. He's like, yeah. And I was like, I have over 125. There was like an audible shriek. He goes, what, are you kidding me? Are you on drugs? And he says, ready for this? The whole freaking east side went up for sale today. Take it. And I was outside raking my lawn. I'll never forget that. Just the transition from this like calm demeanor to like him freaking out on the phone. And I kind of laughed. I was like, yeah, I know. He's like, are you kidding me? But that line, the whole east side went up for sale today. He was right. And I told you about the first listing that I had in, faux Leslieville, right? I said it was Heward. It was around the corner. I told you about the other one that I had up at Danforth. And what we're seeing, like we had an offer date on this property. It wouldn't have sold. So we get a bully for 125. And don't get me wrong. Like I think these guys paid 1.2 for the house a couple years ago. So yeah, they're getting out. But when that agent said, are you on drugs? You got to take that. The whole east side went up for sale. That was maybe one of the best lines of 2025. So here's another story. And here's a complete opposite. Here's a success story. We get a listing on the lease side and it's really unique, like super unique. Now unique can be amazing or unique can be terrible, especially in an area like lease side where you just don't know. Everyone's the same in lease side. They want the same things. This is a very different type of house. So I speak to a colleague of mine, says that's worth like 3.6, 3.7. We're like, okay, cool, thanks. We're listing at 3.995. Another agent from another brokerage who I know very well, love her to death. She says, I think you're high at 3.995. I was like, all right, I get it. So we listed for sale and we have 2 groups. Why did I say groups instead of showings? We had 5 showings. 5 showings via 2 groups. Have you done the math there? One set of buyers went in 3 times. One set of buyers went in twice. Both brought offers. And I don't want to use the term bidding war, but each of them revised their offer 3 times. We ended up selling this for $4.25 million. What kind of $4 million house sells over the list price? It was so funny for so many reasons. And it's not I told you so. The 2 colleagues, the one that was super nice was like, I don't know. The other guy that was, I know best. And you were off by, $600,000. So listen, I didn't know it was going to sell for $425, but I figured you list it for $399. Maybe there's someone out there that really likes it. The expectation was, they might, if they love it, come in, at list close to it. They might, come in low. Maybe you sell it for $395. If it sits, you can always reduce. If it's on the market for 2 months, maybe you're looking at $3.8. We ended up getting 2 offers from 2 groups who showed it combined 5 times and sold it for $4.25 million. Now, another blog I wrote in April, developers suing pre-construction buyers. Who is to blame? This was a big story. Developers decided to go on the offensive with the buyers who refused to close. And I said, who's to blame? Now, I'm the furthest thing from a shill for developers. I've been ranting and raving about the pre-construction house of cards that was going to collapse for 15 years. I've never sold a pre-construction condo. And I've always said, you get in a car crash, you're not wearing your seatbelt. You're not going to blame the car manufacturer, right? So I get it. A lot of these buyers, they can't close. They don't want to close. Too bad. You signed a contract. And I have no sympathy for them because I've never sold a pre-construction condo in my career. I've had people say to me, listen, I appreciate your advice and everything, but this is what I'm going to do. I've had clients that I worked with looking at resale that have said, come to the sales center with me and represent me. And I said, no, because I don't believe in it. I had one person once, and this is going to sound tacky. I don't like talking about compensation, the word commission. He said to me, I don't understand. All you have to do is walk me in the door and you're going to get a 4% commission. And I said, and the fact that I'm not doing that is a testament to how much I believe that this is a mistake. Anyways, he ended up buying through the developer. That project was canceled. That was the King's Club. There's a big story about that one. So developers suing pre-construction buyers, who's to blame? That's a blog post worth reading. The Toronto Star article was a great piece of journalism. I can't remember. I apologize. I think it was Carrie Feinstein. They do great work, and they investigated it, and they looked at all of the different lawsuits filed. And what they found was there were 2 developers that were suing 130 plus buyers for refusing to close. So if you're a buyer, you go put your deposit down for 120 grand, and then it's time to close 5 years later, and the condo has dropped in value 250 grand, you think I can just walk away from my 120. No, it's a contract. You sign it, and now they're coming after you. So in May, we get the April TREB stats. Average price is down 4.2% year over year. So think about it. That gap is growing. What we saw was January it was up, and then it was down in Feb, down in March, and now it's down 4.2% in April. Now the gap was 2.2% and then 2.5%. Now it's 4.2%. It's really growing. And sales were the lowest of all time if you remove the pandemic affected 2020. Now we've seen the lowest of all time in Feb, March, and April. Now those sales were 7,114, down 21.3% year over year. So in March, we're down 23.6% in sales. In April, down 21.3% in sales. We're seeing the lowest sales of all time in Feb, March, and April. Oh my God, what is happening? I don't want to give credit to Donald Trump, but really scared the SHIT out of a lot of people. You know what I mean? I do that a lot around my kids now. My daughter said to me the other day, I can spell, right? So another interesting story. Never had this happen before. I leased a condo for $5,000 a month. I am representing the seller, landlord. And the day of closing, the tenant's agent emails me and says, hey, they're not going to take possession. I was like, okay, cool. We're keeping your deposit. He's like, oh, no, we'd like it back. No. I wrote about this on my blog. I had a couple people take issue with it, which is fine because people take issues with all sorts of things. There's no right and wrong in life except I'm right here. So the tenant basically handcuffed us. We leased the property with 60 days notice. And then they said, we're not taking possession. So if we were to go release it, unless we can find someone to take possession the next day, we're losing rent. So we said, we will sign a mutual release and keep your $10,000 deposit. They said, no, we're not doing that. Why would we do that? We want it all back. And then they said, fine, we'll let you keep $2,000. And I went on the offensive and said, we're going to sue you for $60,000, $5,000 a month times 12 for the contract that you signed. And what ended up happening is they released 7,500 of it. And we were able to find a tenant in time. The client didn't lose any money But I found that interesting because I've never had that happen before. Now, I wrote a blog post, and this is the first time I've put this in writing because I don't want to say it's insensitive. I mean, you tell me what this sounds like, okay? We are in a housing crisis. However, the housing crisis has been completely mislabeled and misunderstood. The housing crisis is actually, I can't afford what I want. Dig a little bit deeper and hold on a second. I have to clench my fist and shake it at a cloud because now I'm channeling my inner old man. I believe that the housing crisis is not a lack of available housing. It's not a lack of affordability. It's I can't afford what I want. And across the board, no matter who you are, that's exactly what it is. And that's what socialism has done. And I'm going to try not to go off on a political rant. Pretty sure you know where my politics would lay. But I really do believe that over the last 10, 12 years, from the top down, it's sort of been, hey, everyone's good, everyone's equal, everyone can have everything. We'll give you everything. And listen, that's great if it could ever work, but it doesn't. It's never really worked before. So to tell an entire generation you're special and you're unique, you can have whatever you want and everything's free, right? Free this, free that, free daycare, free dental. I mean, you have to pay for it somewhere and it's future generations and deficits. But point being, if I could draw that back, I think that everyone's been told they should have whatever they want. And I think that the housing crisis is really, I can't afford what I want. So I've often made this case, and I'll start at kind of the lowest common denominator. Let's say you're a young person and you work at Bay and Bloor, and you're like, I can't afford $2,400 a month to rent a condo at Bay and Bloor. Who says you have to live in a condo alone at Bay and Bloor? What happened to you and your buddy renting a basement apartment in Durham for $1,200, spending $600 each, and then taking the GO train? Oh, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. And I don't blame you because society has told you that you shouldn't have to do that. And that's what I wrote about on my blog, is that we've completely moved the goalposts and we've told everyone in the country that you should be able to have whatever you want. And so it's because of this idea that the government has started to put this out there, or people have started to put this out there, that the government needs to make home prices fall. There is a headline: Canadian government has to allow home prices to fall to make housing more affordable again, experts say. This is from CTV News, May of 2025. And I wrote on my blog, talk about cooling the market if you want to, but there's a difference between these four things. Cool the housing market to stop prices from skyrocketing in a time of hyperappreciation. Okay. Cool the housing market. Stop prices from appreciating in any way, shape, or form. Okay, I don't agree, but cool the housing market. Seek to keep prices balanced, level, and steady. Okay, I mean, if house prices never appreciate and we average 2% inflation, then house prices are really net going down. That doesn't make sense. And lastly, cool the housing market. Seek to reduce the value of homes. Now, say what you want about the first two options, or even the third. When you get to the fourth option, this is so far out of the realm of what's logical or responsible that I question the sanity of those that openly advocate for this. So answer me this. When in the history of modern civilization has a country's government deliberately tanked the value of existing homes by 30% and had this lead to economic prosperity? Again, I don't blame the individual. I blame society, the leadership, the last 15 years of leading people to believe that this is the answer. Right? Don't build up, bring down. And I could speak to this forever, but I'm going to try to end it there. Now, there is one more article, actually. Toronto Star, no surprise. The only solution to the housing crisis is falling prices. What else would the Toronto Star have to offer than that? Don't talk about economic prosperity. Don't talk about how to move forward. I mean, I said I wouldn't get political, but like, Canada's always been successful with natural resources. It's the one thing that we have. And now you have an entire generation that are like, no, it's bad. No. Okay, cool. So let's just all live in squalor then. I don't understand it. I mean, I do. Again, I don't blame the individual. We won't get even into that. So now an excerpt from the article. Gregor Robertson, talk about him in an entire podcast, has only been on the job for days, but his comments and his track record indicate a politician more concerned with protecting the inflated value of some Canadians' nest eggs than making sure everyone has a place to call home. If he wants to serve the entire country, he needs to come out and say it. Home prices have got to go down. Where did this author get their master's in economics? This is absolutely insane. But in 2025, everyone has a forum. I mean, this guy has a podcast. Everyone has a forum. And this individual has decided to say that Gregor Robertson is protecting the inflated value of Canadians' nest eggs without making sure everyone has a place to call home. It's not about having a place to call home. It's that they want what other people want. Someone that lives in an apartment wants a house. Someone that wants a house wants a mansion, and so on and so forth. I'll end there. Now, June. June, we get the May Treb stats. We're now down 3.8% year over year. That gap is growing. Now, May has always been the peak. In May, I know these numbers off by heart. In May of 2023, the average home price was $1,196,000. And I said, will we top 1.2 in 2024? We did not, because in May, the peak was $1,165,000 the following year in 2024. Now in 2025, we're down to $1,120,000. And again, sales 6,244, the lowest if you take out the pandemic affected year of 2020. So we've now seen the lowest sales ever, minus pandemic, in Feb, March, April, and May. And we're down from 7,013 in 2024, and that's an 11% decline. The previous 2 months, what were we down? 23.6% and 21.3%. Now we're down only 11%. Is it starting to get better? Yes, as you'll see the numbers continue to go. And this is where you start to see that just as during COVID, prices plummeted, sales plummeted, and then we started to pick up again as it normalized, the Trump thing did eventually become normalized. Now, I'm going to tell one story from the month of June. I had a listing just off of the Danforth, $1,099,000. We got one offer on offer night. How much was it? If you said $1,099,000, you're wrong. It was 1.3. We accepted the offer. Now, some of you are going to say, and fairly, why in the world would a buyer or their buyer agent offer $1.3 million on a 1099 list when they're the only offer? Maybe it was worth 1.4. So again, I always get it ahead of the objections. I've been told I jump to conclusions and make assumptions, but I'm assuming that there are people out there, and I've heard it before, that say, I hate the word should, right? A seller should have to take the price that they're listed at. No, they shouldn't. You want to list for $1, you don't have to take, well, that's different, silly. No, you're listed at $1,099,000 with an offer date. You don't have to take $5 million if you don't want to. And this idea that the government should force them, get out of here. I don't want that in my life. I don't want them involved in every single aspect of my life. I understand that there are issues in the inner workings of the real estate market. I've written a blog about it for almost 2 decades. I do a podcast about it. I'm telling you everything there is to know, but I will die on that hill. So I'm saying that, and it's a little bit off topic because, yeah, that's what people say. Now, we got a $1.3 million offer, and I want you who are naysayers to realize the reason that the buyer and the buyer agent did that is because they thought, well, maybe it's worth 135. Maybe they'll relist tomorrow at 134. So I ask you this, did that agent do her job? Yeah, she did a great job. And the truth is my client struggled with whether to accept it or whether to relist the next day at 1,349. So we said, hey, listen, you relist the next day at 1,349, you've got upside for sure, but you better sell that in the next week or the offers are going to start to come in below 1.3. And so we sold it. Now in July, we looked at the June Treb stats. Year over year, we're now down 5.2%. Remember, we were in the 2s and the 3s. Now we're down 5.2%. So the June sales were only the second lowest of all time. Okay, well, that bucks the trend of the lowest of all time 4 months in a row. And maybe this is a sign of things to come. Now, another condo sale I'll tell you about. Oh my God, 197 Yonge, the Massey Tower. We listed for $999, 58 days on the market. We dropped to $899, 21 days on market, sold $885. And the seller struggled with whether to take $885. Between me and you guys, that thing was probably worth, quote unquote, $850. This sold for $1.2 at the peak, not this unit. These people called us off my blog, but that comp sold for $1.2 at the peak. But the agent who sold this for us, he even said, he's like, listen, my client lives out west. He's got more money than God. He's buying it for his kid. He really doesn't want a protracted negotiation. Thank you. That's the dream buyer when you're in a weak condo market. Now, I had a client buy and sell in the same building. He was living in a bachelor, and he ended up buying a 1+ den. Now, there are friction costs. You have to pay land transfer tax on the purchase. You have to pay real estate fees on the sale. You have to pay legal costs. You're probably not paying anything for moving expenses. But I don't think I've ever had someone buy and sell in the same building before. I really had to think about it. I don't know if that's ever happened. Now, Here's an interesting one. We got this listing. I say we got a listing appointment. It was a property in, let's say, Midtown Toronto. It had not been lived in for probably 6 months. It had not been maintained for many years. It was essentially land value. But when I say land value, I mean someone's going to keep the brick and the roof. Maybe not even the roof. So it's land value, but with a brick dwelling. The front yard was so overgrown, it was known as the house that wasn't there. There were neighbors that would walk by and say, we've never even seen the house behind the trees. Now the reason, it was Tara, my colleague who's on my team, Tara and I went in a listing. They interviewed 6 different agents. The reason that they chose us in the end was fascinating. They said, you're the only ones that want to treat this house and this process with respect. And now this was the son representing the estate. And he elaborated and said, look, we understand that someone's going to rip this house apart, but we don't want to offer that on the market. We want to put our best foot forward to maximize the value, but also to not be embarrassed. We want to feel good about this. And they said that the other 5 agents that they interviewed said, don't do a thing, don't spend a penny, and we're not going to spend a penny of ours. Now, I'm not throwing money away here. I'm not buying the listing, but what we said to them was, you can't just show this house as land value, or you're going to get builders lowballing you. You need to show this house and make it look like someone else might buy it for a different reason. So I'll give you an example. There was stuff this high growing in the eaves troughs. We had to take that out. There were window shutters falling off. There was a decaying awning, right? We ripped that out. And then, and when I say we, guys, I'm not kidding. Okay, tangent here, but like I grew up doing landscaping, construction. I apprenticed with a builder. I built flagstone patios. I built fences. I loved working with my hands. I won the shop award in 1994 at Besborough School. Have you ever heard that story? It's a good one. And Chris is the same way. And Matt and Tara, and we're grinders. And so I said, you know what? I usually work out on Tuesday. My workout's going to be ripping all that stuff out of the front yard. And yes, the 4 of us went over there. We had a day. It's a fun team exercise. We got out our pole saws, got out the chainsaw, and we filled an entire U-Haul full of landscaping crap. And we had people walking by the house saying, neighbors, what a great job. One guy walked by and he said, my kids have always been scared of that house because I'm telling you, it was so overgrown, you couldn't see the house. When all was said and done, listen, on the inside, it was still the same thing. I mean, you know, they had like a bathroom where the toilet had been ripped out. It was not great inside. But from a curb appeal standpoint, that's how you sell real estate. We were able to actually take a nice picture for MLS. But what it did was it showed builders an end user might buy this. So what ended up happening, we get 2 offers from builders that are lowballs. Then we get the end user that wants to buy it and renovate it. And they paid a very good price for it because they were competing with the builders. That wouldn't have happened. Wouldn't have happened if we didn't do the work. So that was a feather in my cap. I know that was a long story, but I loved doing that. I was sore for days, man. I'm telling you. Sometimes I don't want to be in the office. I want to get out and I want to use my hands. Now, also in July, I had my 3rd resale condo listing where the sellers took it off the market and put it up for lease. That's another theme. So now we're into August, my birthday. July Treb stats show the average home price is down 5% on a year-over-year basis. July sales are only the 6th lowest of all time, only the 6th lowest. And now we started to see this insanity in the media, and I wrote a blog about it. CTV News, Toronto's housing market may be shifting again. Did you finally buy or sell? So first of all, did you finally buy or sell? You're hedging your bet. Is the market shifting up? You should be saying, did you finally buy? The market's going down. You should be saying, did you sell? I hate headlines like this. Now, this was fascinating to me because sales were up 11% year over year. It was the first time we've seen sales up year over year. And of course, Treb sends out this ridiculous press release talking about how the market's back and everything. Now, a couple of stories. We sold a property off market. Imagine there's a listing and it doesn't sell. And then imagine I'm a buyer agent and I call that listing agent and I say, hey, remember those people that wanted to sell? Are they interested in selling? And he says, no. And I say, would you like to call them? And he says, no. You know, when we went and knocked on the door and talked to the seller directly and then sold it to our buyer, didn't feel bad at all. Guys, this is a relationship business. And I think there are very few agents that would have given that agent multiple opportunities. I called that agent 3 times and said, go and speak to your clients. We'd like to buy your house. He never said, okay, I'll do it. And so we went and talked to the seller directly. They're not under contract. They hadn't been under contract for 7 months because it was a listing that was on the market in January. And the sellers were like, yeah, okay, we'd love to sell it. And we sold it. Sellers are happy. Buyers are happy. It was a really, really good deal. Last story for the month, 350 Wellington Street. It's a hotel condo. We had 3 offers. Visual thinker, I'm in Yellowstone Park with my family, filling up gas in my car, and I get a phone call. And it's my assistant, Lindsay, who's like, do you know we have another offer on Wellington? Because like cell phone reception was spotty there. And I'm like, sorry, we have 2 now? She's like, no, we have 3. We had 3 offers on a condo. That had not happened for one of my listings since 2022. Now we're into September, okay? We look back at the August Treb stats, down 4.9% year over year. So that's now 5.2% in June, 5.0% in July, and 4.9% in August. That's 3 months. So now you can say the market is, quote, down around 5% year over year. Now, August sales, 5,211, second lowest of all time, just ahead of 2024. Remember what Treb said in July? The market's picking up. Sales are up 11%. Okay. Now, I had a listing that I spent 3 months getting ready. And another one of those listings where, okay, yeah, I can talk about this one. So we priced it at $4 million. And the seller said to me, we had another big name agent come in here and they said to be lucky to get 3.5, 3.6. Don't do anything to it. Someone's going to gut it. What did we do? We painted the entire house. We cleaned the entire house. We got rid of everything. We did an estate sale. We did garbage removal, junk removal, auction. We did all of that fun stuff. We listed it for $4 million. We sold it in 1 day for $4 million. I like doing work on houses. And you know what? Those sellers were so happy. It was their parents' house. And we get a lot of that business, in case it's not obvious. And at the end of the day, looking back at other agents said 3.5, 3.6, don't do anything. Someone's going to completely gut it. You have to market it. You have to make the person that wants to buy it think someone else will want to buy it. And there were a lot of people that looked at it and they were like, it's just too rough. It's just too rough. The buyer that ended up buying it was somebody that wanted, ready for this, into the area, onto the street, the neighborhood, the school district, just like the story I told you in January, except there I was representing the buyer. Now I was representing the seller. Now we had another listing. This one's interesting. We listed this house at 1,799. It was on the east side. And I was nervous about this one because that's a tough price point on the east side. Beautiful house, but everyone wants that house, you know, up in central Toronto or central core, let's say, Midtown. 1,799. We get 2 offers. Someone comes in at 1.7. The next agent says, I see you have an offer. Yes, we do. So I'm competing. Yes, you are. Offers us 1.85 unconditional. Again, I'm a visual thinker. It's Sunday night. I'm at my mom's. Kids are screaming. Sorry, how much? Now, the other buyer did come up to 1.825, but it was conditional. They lost. That was a really good sale. That was in September. Now, I wrote a blog called The House of Cards That Was Always Going to Fold. This is the most complete blog, or really anything I've done on the pre-construction condominium collapse. I can use the word collapse because it did collapse. I won't get into it now, but if you have time, as I said, I've been writing about this since I started my blog in 2007. What happened in pre-construction condominiums is going to be a test case for all time. It is exactly like what happened in the book, The Big Short, or the movie, if you saw it. And I'm telling you 10 years from now, or 20 years from now, it will be studied in textbooks. Now, in October, am I boring you with statistics? Treb stats show that the average home price is down 4.3%. Okay, so it's still down, but not as much. September sales are the 4th lowest of all time. And they're ahead of 2024 by 10.7%. So remember in Feb and March, we were down 23% and 21% year over year, and I called that the Trump effect. And now we're up 11%, 10%. Do you see how that year changed? So I'm not trying to put a positive spin on this. Prices are still down, but the activity's up year over year. Now, I had a listing out in Birchcliff that I sold after a year and a half. Now, off and on the market, don't get me wrong, it wasn't a year and a half straight. This is, I think, the longest I'd ever had a listing. And these people were so nice and so amazing, and I was so happy when we finally got it done. And the buyers were awesome too. They're not my clients. The agent was beautiful to work with. It took a long time, and I don't know why. And I think I will never know why. But it's just one of those stories where you think, I cannot believe this finally happened. Now, another property, we talk about the work that we do on houses. This one, we did a full renovation. We looked at the property, and think about a typical subdivision where you have the unfinished basement, but it's unfinished not like it was in 1911. It's unfinished like it was in 2009, where you've got a high ceiling, and then you look at the walls, and there's studs with insulation and vapor barrier, and you go, we could finish this. And we did. We hired a contractor. What did they do? They threw up drywall, they put in a ceiling, a light fixture, a door, and we created finished square footage. And we took this property, we listed it, we got 5 offers and sold it. And in the end, the price, it was really good. And I say really good, it wasn't a record, but it was really good. There were 9 other properties for sale in this pocket at the time. Do you know how many of those have sold since? If you're listening to this, you can't see that I'm making a 0. So I thought that was great because the pre-listing renovation that we did worked. The seller spent $70,000. That was a lot of money. They did floors, kitchen counters, backsplash, lights, bathroom vanities. They did a full renovation, but my God, in that area, saturated with inventory, they got it sold. That is a testament to their investment. Now, another condo that we had, listen to this one, guys. We listed in May for $819, 35 days in the market. We listed in June for $799, 51 days in the market. We listed in August for $779, 22 days in the market. We ended up selling it for $760 in September. Again, it's the condo market. But I'm not, I thought about this. Is this guy bragging about doing a poor job? No, what we're saying is that this is a story about the condo market in the year 2025. So listen, you want to watch a podcast where someone's like, oh my God, we sell all our properties in one day for full list price. That's not the reality. These are listings that we have cleaned, painted, staged, marketed, well represented. This is the reality of the condo market. So I'm sure, I'm starting to get ads on my social media for like these agents I've never heard of that are like selling courses in, real estate fantasy. This is reality, guys. That's not the last one I'll talk about. Now in November, we see the TREB stats for the month of October are down 7.1% year over year. October's number is 1,054,000. Down from 1,135,000, 7.1% year over year. And that is the highest that it will get. Sales are the 4th lowest all time, but they're now back behind 2024. So remember we were behind 23%, 21%, then we were ahead 11%, 10%. Now we're 7.8% behind. It was a tough fall. Now we had this listing out in the 905. We listed in August, 1,199,000. Again in September, 1,199,000. 1,149,000. We ended up selling for 1,075,000 in October. And you know what? Same thing. Clean, painted, staged, marketed, represented. That's the market in this particular subdivision of the 905 where there's 80 competing properties. That's the market. But that's what it takes to get a deal done. And we're not rushing people. Obviously, it took 2.5 months. We're not leaving money on the table because it took that long. But sometimes you just have to admit, we're going to price it up here, see what the interest is like. We can list the market. We can readjust. It's going to take as long as it takes. Now, in November, the Ontario government announces Bill 60. Bill 60. Oh, man. You're going to start protecting landlords? And then they reverse it inside of a week. I know some of you are like, no, Bill 60, it was going to displace people from their homes. It's an impossible task. And I wrote a blog about it. I think I called it Protecting Landlords and Supporting Tenants, the Impossible Contradiction. And it's true. How do you do that? But the Doug Ford government, they ended up reversing course. Governments do that all the time. Now, I wrote a blog post called Who's Going to Build Houses, Home Builders or the Government? And I noted this in my blog post. Setting a goal is easy. Achieving the goal is hard. That's what governments have always done. Governments have absolutely no plans on how to build houses. They all set these goals. And I went through in my blog post and I quoted every single political party's goal or promise. None of it means anything. Like it's full-on Austin Powers, Dr. Evil, just saying 1 billion houses. None of it made any sense. Now, the Fraser Institute wrote an article called The Federal Government Wants to Build 4,000 Homes Despite Years of Real Estate Mismanagement. From the article, Prime Minister Mark Carney recently launched his Build Canada Homes federal agency, which will help build 4,000 factory-built homes at an initial cost of $13 billion. In light of the affordability crisis that's plagued large swaths of the country, many Canadians likely welcome more government involvement in the housing sector. But does Ottawa have the ability to efficiently and effectively build homes? Of course not. Of course not. I've always said, for every dollar of tax revenue the government gets, they crap out 48 cents after they've mismanaged and a bunch of civil servants buy Montblanc pens. But that is what governments do. And not just Canada. Don't feel bad. Every government does it. The government should not be building houses. Developers should. But the problem is that the government can't incentivize developers to build because there's too much taxes and labor's too expensive and there's too much, HST and materials cost too much, et cetera, et cetera. So I spent a lot of November talking about the government's involvement in the housing market, and then ended up writing this article later on called "Did the Government Change Course on Housing Promises?" So essentially, the federal government promised not to build, but to ensure the country will be building 500,000 homes per year within a decade. And when you look at the chart one of the newspapers put together, it was literally off the charts. It was like, on your dashboard of your car where it's got, the RPM, and then there's like that red area over here that it never goes to. And you're like, well, red, bad. I don't want to drive that fast. Basically, that's what this chart showed. That's where, we need to be in the red zone, which is to say that it'll never happen. There was also no mention of this goal in the federal budget, and the government started to walk back their promise. So that brings us to December, folks. The November TREB stats were down 6% year over year. Okay, it's not as bad as the 7% that we saw in October. But remember when I said at the beginning of this podcast, which seems like it was 10 hours ago, if you're still here, great. Remember when I said January's $1,040,994 was important and we come back to it? I said it's important because it was the only month of 2025 where we saw an increase of year over year. Guys, November's price was below January's. We've only seen that twice ever, 2017 and 2022. Both of those years were rolling off peaks. 2025 is not rolling off a peak. A pessimist is going to say, oh, that just means we're headed for another pronounced drop. I'm going to call it an outlier. I don't really know what that means, but definitely worth noting. I told you I was a nerd, right? See the bridge layer? Yes, I'm a stats nerd. That to me was fascinating. November below Jan. Now, sales, okay, 5,010, fourth lowest all time. That's a third straight month of fourth lowest. September, October, and November. So say what you want, at least the market is consistent. Now, fall market sales. September was up 10.7. October was down 7.8. November was down 14.7. That's, of course, year over year. So what it tells me is that we had a relatively weak fall, but we did pick up a little bit in the mid of the year. So we don't have the December stats yet because, of course, this is in December. We're filming. We're looking towards the end of the year. But what I can say about 2025, guys, on the whole, now that I've given you all of those fun stories, it was a declining year, but February of 2026 will have represented 4 years since the peak. Is 4 years enough to see a rebound? I think that for the longest time, cycles were always 6-7 years. But then we basically saw a 20-year bull run. So throw that out the window. So I'm not going to go and make any bold predictions here, but I will say there's potential with interest rates substantially lower. There's potential with people looking at coming off of the peak. But I've always said that, it's the herd mentality. Herd mentality is nicer than people or sheep. I think once someone starts buying, someone else will start buying and everyone will get back into the market. And I do think there's potential, not in Jan, Feb, but maybe towards the fair weather months, April, May of next year. Now, sales this year will be the lowest of all time. And by all time, I mean I've been tracking since 2002 because I'm the aforementioned stats nerd. And if you go back to the 90s, well, the city was half the size and the TREB data is not complete. We saw 66,000 and change sales in 2023, 67,000 in 2024. We are pacing 62 to 63,000 sales this year. It will be the lowest of all time. Now, 2025 to me will be known as the year of the death of the pre-construction condominium industry. You have developers canceling projects left, right, and center. Sales are abysmal. No one's selling pre-construction condos because, of course, no one's buying them. The prices are too high. But you're also not selling any infill developments in Durham. That market completely, utterly tanked. No one's buying. No one's building. No one's selling. Developers are suing buyers. And, of course, I wrote about this on my blog incessantly. Now, the resale condo market was quite poor, but it has medium-term upside. And I'll go to my deathbed. I will swear to you on my family, the long-term upside here is massive. The government has absolutely no clue what to do or what they're doing. Well, I don't know. We all vote different ways. Some of you disagree with me there. It's fine. Just go and throw your money in their proverbial hat. I have not seen anything from any level of government anywhere that says they know what they're doing. The city of Toronto's bank. Don't even get me started, guys. I'll get really angry. I'll break this table like a WWE character. I don't know what the city of Toronto's doing. The federal government has no idea what they're doing, guys. So, all the more reason to see home prices increase because it's called scarcity, supply, demand. We're not building anything. Everything's getting more expensive. Interest rates are lower. That brings me to my last point here. Modest optimism for 2026. Okay, optimism kind of conflicts with the negativity you were just throwing at us. Didn't you just say the world was going to end? No, I didn't say that. I said the government doesn't really know what to do, but how can they, right? It's a very difficult time, not just in Toronto, not just in Canada, but across the entire world. Man, we live in fascinating times. And I think this podcast was fascinating if I'm on the outside looking in. I think it was long. I appreciate you listening. But as I said from the beginning, the reason I want to tell stories about my buyers, my sellers, my listings, it's not because I'm trying to brag about anything or orate about it. It's because I see so many people talking about the market, but they're not actually in it. Don't just throw stats out there. Don't just give me mights or should-haves or hypotheticals. These are real stories. These are real people. Buyers, sellers, landlords, tenants, clients of mine. These stories to me sum up the year. Well, of course, I was inundating you with statistics along the way. So folks, that is it for the 2025 year interview here on The Last Honest Realtor. Thank you so much for watching, not just today, but anytime you watch. We do this podcast every 2 weeks, and I'll pick it back up in January. I'll probably do some sort of predictions post. People love those, but I think, as I said, everyone's doing predictions now. In order to predict the future, you've got to look back at the past, and that is what this was. So if you are watching, please remember to like, comment, or subscribe. Drop me a comment in the section on YouTube if you're watching. Love to see what you guys think for the year in review or for the year ahead. If you're listening on Apple Music or Spotify, again, you always have to say, please remember to like, comment, or subscribe. My son says that just randomly throughout the house sometimes because he sees it on YouTube, which is interesting. It's a sign of the times, folks. What can I say? Thank you for watching here, guys. Have a fantastic holiday season, and we'll see you in January here on The Last Honest Realtor.